sometimes think you just need to hear somebody else say, like, it's okay if you're not this rocket to success because you've
Right.
taken time to take care of yourself and take care of your family too.
Hi there, mompreneurs. Welcome back for another episode of the Good Enough Mompreneur podcast. I'm your host, Angela Mishuli. Thank you for joining me this week. I have a very special episode with Katrina Bell, owner of the Copper Bell Candle Company. And her story is so inspiring because as moms, we continually have obstacles that can hold us back, and we definitely need to give ourselves a lot of grace, but we also need to learn how to, on a certain level, push through. And Katrina certainly did that as she became an accidental entrepreneur and helped build her side hustle to a successful business during the pandemic when her company was downsized, but she was also a mom to a toddler. So I look forward to bringing that interview to you. But first, I wanted to mention that as we are beginning to start a new school year, I'm looking at using my time more wisely. So I put together an aligned mompreneur workbook that I am going to leave in a link down below. You can also find it in my Instagram bio link, but I wanted to remind you of that. And without further ado, here's my interview with Katrina. Hi, Katrina. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really love your business, and I really love how your story on how you were kind of thrown into being a business owner, and you have a candle business, which many would think that is a saturated market. And I just really can't wait to bring your story to our listeners.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah.
And yes, saturated market is very correct.
Right. But I mean, I just love your brand. It's so fun. And we'll talk about that in a moment. And I personally love travel, and I own a travel business. So I love to ask people, like, where is one place that was like a really transformational place that you visited, or somewhere that really impacts you, or you love to go or visit?
I feel like I have so many different answers. A place that I love to visit, just my mind immediately went to like my grandparents' house from when I was a kid, but that's not, a travel thing.
I love that. No, I love that though. Yeah.
But like probably my favorite place I've ever done, I did a big family trip with my mom and my siblings. A few years ago, we went to Greece. So we did some time, on an island on Crete, and then we went to Athens, and I'm like such a history nerd, so it was such an amazing experience. And then, my mom and I continued on after that, and we went to Germany for an extra week after all my siblings left. So
that's so cool. I love that.
Days passed because I could not do that anymore.
But I think, it's like, and two, like so many of us during the pandemic, we're just kind of sitting and like surviving on those memories of things that we did and places we love to go or look forward to going. So no, I love that. Why don't you tell our listeners a little more about your company and how you kind of found yourself as an accidental business owner, I guess?
It's a great way to describe me. Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
So, I mean, as you introduced, my name is Katrina. I run a candle company. I'm based in Southern Ontario. The company is called the Copper Bell. So yes, soy candles. We're a dime a dozen. There's a ton of soy candles, but I try to like market on, a funny little sarcastic name or some kind of pop culture reference or a pun. And what I really love doing is catering to scent sensitive people. So anyone who like takes a Bath and Body Works candle or a Yankee candle or something, and finds that they get like a nasty headache,
Yeah.
like, I'm your girl, come to me. I won't do that to you. So I was that person, I used to buy Bath and Body Works candles for ages. And I tell everybody this and like thought nothing of it. The candle's just a candle. I didn't think about what was in it.
Yeah.
And then after I had my daughter, I noticed that I would get like an instant headache when I lit them up and went, oh, that's kind of weird. So yeah, I gave them away, all of like my big candle collection. Just my friends loved it because it was, here you go. Here's all of these that I can't burn anymore. And I kind of figured like, oh, I guess I won't burn candles anymore.
Right.
And it took a while after that to slowly start experimenting and thinking about, oh, maybe it was just they're too strongly scented. Maybe I'll try an unscented candle, all that kind of stuff. And that led me into, well, I should probably just make them for myself. Like, why would I buy an unscented candle? It can't be that difficult to make it. And then, yeah, from making unscented candles to experimenting with different kinds of fragrances and learning about things, it sort of just developed into like a hobby and a little side hustle. And then I call myself an accidental entrepreneur because the pandemic rolled around. So I started this as a business, as a side hustle in fall 2019. So we were just sort of starting to hear whispers of like that weird thing that's going on in China. But it's never going to come here. Like it's not going to be that big of a deal. And then, mid-March, everyone got sent to work from home. I was going like, what is going on? Daycare's closed. And 2 weeks into the pandemic, so right at the end of March, the company that I was working for did a massive layoff. So about 25% of the workforce. Wow. And I was included in that. And like now I go, okay, I'm thrilled that I was included in that because I'm really happy with where I am. Right. But at the moment it's terrifying.
Of course.
And I had a 2-year-old. My daughter was only 2 at the time. I still feel very much like we're still in the pandemic. And so I think about how old she is now. And I look back at how old she was when this all started. And I'm like, my God, time is just a blur. But I decided to take my like pretty brand new 6-month-old side hustle and go, okay, can I make money doing this? Because I can't go job hunting. I can't apply for jobs because I'm home with a 2-year-old. So what can I do in the meantime?
Right.
Maybe learn some new skills, maybe make some money. And it just sort of took off from there. I'm like, now here I am sitting in an office in a production space with staff. And it's been
incredible.
A wild ride.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So I just love how you took something that you needed yourself and you used it as inspiration to create what you needed. And it sounds like that's kind of a part of how you stand out in what would be considered a crowded marketplace. But do you want to talk about how even in that crowded marketplace you were able to find success? And
yeah, absolutely. I do think it's something that like most people could do if you can approach it from some kind of unique perspective. So are there other people who might be great for scent sensitive people? Of course, but I've chosen, as I got the feedback from people that like, oh, I also used to get headaches and I don't with yours, I went, oh, this is a great thing that I need to talk about more.
Right.
So I think the best thing you can do if you are in like a very saturated market or you want to start making something and you think, oh, but 1 million people already do it, like how could I ever succeed, is just find something that's unique. When I started creating, I found that a lot of people were making like a very minimalist white label sort of plain looking candle. And I, looking at them, went, I can't tell any of these brands apart. I don't know who is who. And so I have a very colorful candle, a colorful product. And there's definitely more of that coming
and
too.
And a humorous one too.
And a humorous one. Yeah, that was from the very start. I knew I didn't want something that was just like, I don't know. Like coffee candle or whatever. I wanted it to have a little pun or something just that felt a little extra special. And so I think all of those little parts together, and showing up online and being on social media and engaging with the consumer and the customer is what's helped me kind of carve out my little section of a busy market.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I really like to talk about is all of the limiting beliefs that we tend to have when we start a business, or like yourself, where you're just kind of thrown into it, and that can really hold you back. And, you know, I think a lot of people think, oh, I can't do that because there are 1,000 other people who do that. But when you really consider the number of people in the world, and you can't serve all of them, and no matter what, there is a buyer for what you have. If you just keep that in mind and believe in your product, it's like you can actually, see some success. And if you just, keep that in mind. But looking at your website and your social media, it's so beautiful and polished, and you're in an office space and you have staff. And I think we tend to look at where people are at when they're in a position to say, hey, look at me, but they don't see all of those tough moments like in the beginning. And so I like to talk about that, because so many people who listen to my podcast are in that stage, or they've started a business and they're just not sure, they're stuck. And it can be very lonely, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic, if you're working remotely or whatever. So can you talk about some of those, other, I'm sure you had some fears and some limiting beliefs, and how you kind of push through that.
Absolutely. And I think people, you're right, from the outside will look at someone and go, oh, like, she's so successful, she can't have any problems.
Right.
And I love to be vocal about, like, now I have struggles. Now there's things like that never goes away. That fear and that stress and anxiety and like comparison, looking at someone else who seems to be further ahead than you, like that doesn't stop just because you seemingly are so much more successful. And if you went all the way back on my Instagram, you scroll to the very beginning, you would see, the nitty gritty and how my product photos used to look and all that kind of stuff. Right. But I think the healthiest thing to do when you're stuck in a cycle of like comparison and things like that is to not be on social media, because I really, I'm in an area too where there just seems to be a lot of little candle makers, and I never really noticed that or was bothered by that until I started spending more and more time on like Instagram and TikTok, and then they all just want to show you people like you or businesses like you, right. Mm-hmm. And it feeds that anxiety. So like taking a step out of that is
I never thought about that, but that's so true. It's like you get caught in that algorithm of like whatever it is you do. And so the same people start popping up and you're like, crap.
Yeah. Oh God. Like all the time, where you become very, very aware, like how saturated it is. And I don't say that as a bad thing, because I've thought about this before. And I've had conversations about this, like with business advisors, and the less like barriers to entry something has, the more competitive of a market it's going to be. So you can buy a learn how to make candles kit from Amazon and get started on your kitchen counter. Right. So there's going to be a ton of people who are able to get into that and start doing that. And I do think we can all find a niche. Like you said, you can't talk to everybody. So if you're thinking, oh, my target customer is just literally anybody from 20 to 60 who likes candles, you're going to have a much harder time than if you say, I sell to like the 35-year-old mom who doesn't give a shit about looking polished and, just wants to like relax at the end of the night. You have a much clearer target person and like thing to talk to than just anybody who wants something that smells nice.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that that's so true. And it's hard to kind of get there. But for me, I don't know, in my businesses, it's kind of like you just have to get out there and just keep doing things. Is that kind of what you found is?
Yeah, I think the more you do something, the easier it is. And we're all so desperate for that face-to-face now after years of online and all of this kind of stuff. And so I found like a huge benefit to trying to go out and, go into stores that I would love to sell my candles and just meet new people and say, here's a sample of what I can do. if you're looking for a new maker, I would love for you to try this and consider me. Like, I've had amazing reactions to that because nobody does that anymore. Everyone, it's all
Yeah.
online. It's all, sliding into DM. So if you can
Hmm.
go face to face and talk to people, you are giving yourself like a competitive edge.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think that people tend to, and I think especially with the pandemic, we kind of lost touch with how to do that.
Yeah.
And maybe we've kind of gotten in the habit of kind of being behind the computer too much and not connecting with people and physically.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, it was terrifying to do it for the first few
Right,
times, but every time I
right.
did it and it was a positive experience, it's
Uh-huh.
so energizing because I'm
Right.
also that person. I'm like, I don't want a phone call. My dad
Yeah.
constantly is the person who will like call me instead of just sending me like a quick text to try and figure something out. It drives me nuts.
Yes.
Like, I
It's
am
a
a woman of my
generational
generation.
thing.
I know.
Yeah.
I would much prefer a text or an email. I don't want to call
Right.
anybody, but I think there's something
Right.
to be said for the face to face, I think is really helpful.
Uh-huh.
And even if it's terrifying, like the more you do it, the less terrifying it becomes
Right.
with
Yes.
anything.
Mm-hmm. And then too, like if you go towards those things that terrify you the most, like find out what that is, find out what makes your heart skip a little bit. And then go do that. And I think that then that's where you find growth. It's like, you
Absolutely.
know,
The work you're avoiding, the things that you're maybe a little
right,
bit too like,
exactly. When you figure that out, that's where the sweet spot is because it's like, you're just really um whatever you're running from, that's what you need to be doing.
yeah.
But
And
and and
if
that's
you want
a
to change your business, you have to change something, right? So if that's
right,
doing
exactly.
something that terrifies you because you were too scared to do it before, that can be a
Right,
huge moment for change.
right. So you were doing all of this, and that, I mean, just starting a business is enough for anybody. But you were a mom, and
Mhm.
then a mom to a toddler, which is like, holy.
It's tiring. It's
Uh, right? Oh my gosh. So, how did starting your business impact being a mom, and how did it affect your family, and how, because one thing that I hear a lot of is like, oh, I don't want to start my business because then I have to work 24 hours a day. I much rather work for somebody else and have the cutoff. But can you talk about what was that experience like for you starting a business and managing being a mom? And
difficult, I will say, just if I could sum it up in one word. And I think
right,
also because it happened in the pandemic, right? So
right.
when I first started just beforehand, it was, after my kid goes to bed,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'll make some candles at night and I
Mm-hmm.
would do a couple of markets some weekends. So it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't too much of a burden on my time. And
Mm-hmm.
then before I ever got massive, I got laid off. So my day job became childcare.
Mm.
And childcare in
Yeah.
a really weird world where like you can't go to story time at the library and we couldn't even use playgrounds at the beginning. So it was a very isolating,
Yeah.
difficult time
Right.
to be a stay-at-home parent and then to also think about a business and when can I fit this in during the day. So it was incredibly difficult
Yeah.
on myself and my own mental health and my relationship with my
Sure.
husband. um I feel like we're on the other side of it. We have a lot more balance now. My daughter
Right.
just finished
I
her
love
first year of
that.
kindergarten.
Yeah.
And so there's always new challenges, right? Like when
Yeah.
she stopped going to daycare and she started going to kindergarten, my day got shorter actually because school ends at like
Yes.
3 o'clock and
Yep.
daycare went to 5. And so that was a challenge all through the last year. So
Right.
we're kind of trying to figure out something different for this coming year. But
Right.
um, yeah,
Man.
I know childcare I do think that the pandemic really highlighted for just our society as a whole how
Mm-hmm.
important childcare is because you can't,
Sure.
it's a job and you can't do that job and
Yeah.
then also do a full other job at the exact same time.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just like I mean, there were so many things we took for granted or didn't realize how fundamental it was in our life to be able to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my daughters were older, but it was, I, in a essence, had to be their teacher in a way, or be on them about school in a way that I had never had to do before. So
Yeah.
we all had these additional things on our plate. Plus, trying to take care of ourselves mentally. That's why, I mean, starting a business during that time, it's like, and successfully getting through it, it's like, from now on you can look back and be like, I got this.
Mm-hmm. It
I
was a hard
survived
time.
2020.
And I do think there was almost a benefit to starting. Like I know a lot of people who started during the pandemic, like stores were closed a lot. So having an e-commerce business, and maybe leaning into local delivery or all that kind of stuff was helpful. Like, and especially that like kind of Christmas season in 2020
Right.
was when like my business was slowly growing, and then it shot up because Christmas, again, we had, at least where we had another lockdown.
Right.
And people were desperate for Christmas presents. So in that way, it was like, it was helpful. And now we're kind of on this weird tail end of things where people are traveling again, and we're coming into this looming recession. And so it's a new, difficult environment to navigate. So you just always have to be on your toes and trying to
pivot in the right,
exactly.
what's happening,
And be confident that, one, hope that you make the right decision, but two, if you haven't, that you can quickly readjust and figure something out.
Right. And that's another thing too, where I think I see when people start businesses, it's kind of like, I'm going to create this brand and I'm going to do this and that, and that's how it's going to be. But it's like, if you're constantly in the mode of being able to adapt and change to what your clients are saying, your customers are saying, that's where you are really strong as a business. If you are just, how did you kind of experience, and we talked a little bit about client feedback. How do you use that to help you be, more pragmatic in your business?
I think it's a very careful path to walk, because you'll get people suggesting things all the time. And I've certainly, like, I've added products because people say, like, I love these, I will buy them. So I make candles. I got into like wax melts, for example, a very related product. And discovered like some people buy them, but it really is a totally different market that you're serving with that product. So I have since kind of phased them back out and focused back on just candles, because I found like they're not, it felt like a lot of overhead for me and not a lot of revenue generating. So I think that, I'm sure that anybody listening has experienced this, where someone says, oh my God, you have to make this, or I want it in this color, or try this. And you make it and then you go, here it is, and no one buys it. So, in some ways you have to kind of stay clear on your path of like what you want and what you think is good, and then also take that feedback. And so some of the things that have been really beneficial for me to have feedback on, I recently did like a brand refresh earlier this year. So I worked with an agency to kind of redesign my labels. And I got down to like, honestly, like looking back at it, it felt like such a silly decision, but I really wanted a squared edge on my label corner, because that's what I had before. And I found one printer that was going to do it for, X number of dollars. And then another, all they could do was rounded, but they were like half the price. And I said to my customers, do you care at all what the corner of the label looks like? And everyone was like, no, why would, like, of course not.
That's great. That's really
I saved myself thousands of dollars on that printing. Because for me, I was so in my head of like, well, it has to look this way. I've always done a squared edge. This is really important for me. This is what the look needs to look like. But am I willing to pay that much more for it? And ultimately, is my customer going to care? Like, if it was worth it to my customer, sure, but clearly not. So then,
that's a really important lesson. I mean, not only to be in alignment with who you are and where you want to be and have a clear idea, but Also recognizing those times where maybe you need to get out of your own way and
Yeah.
consider like, how important is this really? And,
Yes.
probably, the shape of a label is not gonna, the crux of my brand and my business.
Yeah, even though it felt massive at the time, like it was such a thing that I struggled with for
Interesting.
so long. And I,
Yeah.
brought it to Instagram and asked my customers for
Uh-huh.
feedback. And like, so yeah, looking at it now, I'm like, well, of course, like obviously that doesn't matter.
Hindsight is
But
2020.
absolutely. So I think there are very, very valuable times to take in that feedback. And then there are other times where you might try it and it's worth trying it,
Right.
but you'll find, oh, just because people say they want something doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to
Right.
pony up money for it.
Right. So thinking about, those your candles and where you are now, what would you say is like your favorite thing that you make that you just like, I love this.
I think I have one for every season that
Yeah.
in that season, I go, oh God, I love that one. It's my
Mm-hmm.
favorite. So I have a few kind of long-standing ones. I'm a big citrus fan. So
Oh,
almost anything I make that has citrus in it is going to
uh-huh.
be like probably one of my favorites.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. At this very moment, probably a spring one, even though we're nowhere near spring. But it's like it's called Apple Blossom Jeans, and it's like it's a
We
little.
sing that song in our house.
I love it. So I knew I wanted some kind of like
I love
punny pop
that.
culture reference for it, but like
Yeah.
a little floral, a little
Uh-huh.
like a little musky, a
Mm-hmm.
little, a little something. It's a very unique blend. I've never smelled anything else like it. And I
Right.
don't even have it right now. Maybe someone will listen to this in 6 months and go, oh yeah, I got to try that.
Right.
But
I love
probably that
that.
one.
What do you think now that you're on the other side of having to, make this pivot that was kind of, just put in your lap, and it sounds like you don't have any regrets. Can you imagine where you would be right now had you not started your business full time?
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that because I thought I had also changed jobs like September, October 2019. So
Mm-hmm.
I've thought back, I left a job at a university and I went to like a tech company, which is ultimately where I was let go from.
Mm-hmm.
And I've thought with my friends who still work at the university, I go, like, had I not quit and changed jobs and the pandemic hit, like
Mm-hmm.
my world would have been so different because would I have
Right.
continued making candles? Would I have like, we would have just
Right.
been working from home and doing
Right.
doing that stuff from the office. So I think, yeah, it's so funny. Like when you go down these little garden paths and see where they lead you. And, had I made choice B instead of choice A, where would I be?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, middle of everything. It was a horrible time, but to be able to share a story where somebody made the most of it, and actually they're looking back and going, wow, that was actually glad that happened. And I pivoted the way I did, I think is really inspirational.
Thank you.
Yeah, we just get so stuck in our own story and where we are in life, and to be able to look back and see that.
Yeah, it's nice to look back to and reflect,
Yes.
and because it can be so easy to forget about like how much you've grown. To get a chance to talk about it all from the beginning is it's
Yeah.
nice.
What inspiration would you leave with a mom who's listening to this, who was where you were when you're like in the beginning, trying to figure it all out, hopes to be one day where you are, and looking back on their successes? What are some of the things that will help them kind of stay in the game? And
One of the things
yeah.
I think I wished I would have heard at the time is it's I always got stuck in comparing myself to businesses who did what I did, who might have made
Mm,
candles or stuff like that.
mm-hmm.
And it seemed to
Yeah.
be worlds ahead of me. But everyone that I looked at and I compared and went, oh, I'm not like her, didn't have children. And
Mm,
it's apples and oranges. If you have somebody
right.
who's a young adult and can put 80 hours a week into her business because she has nothing else to worry about,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to be at that same place because you're going to burn yourself out trying and you're going to like I don't know, I hated myself trying to like, ignore my kid to work on something else. So I think just like give yourself the grace that it's parenting your child is a huge amount of time and energy and mental capacity. And the thing that I did that gave me the most like sanity was just giving myself like leeway to not have crazy long weeks. Like, no one goes into wanting to work for themselves hoping that they're going to work more than they did in like a 9 to 5, right? You're not like, oh man, I wish I had less time with my children. That's why I want to work with myself.
Yep.
So I accepted that my growth would be a little bit slower because I needed to be able to give that time to my kid.
Sure.
And it's okay to do that. Like, it's okay if you choose not to, but I sometimes think you just need to hear somebody else say, like, it's okay if you're not this rocket to success because you've taken time to take care of yourself and take care of your family too.
1000%. And I just did a post on that because that is definitely a trap that you can get into. And it's like everybody is different, and you just have to have tunnel vision away for like what you're doing and stay true to yourself. And, eventually you'll be able to look back and go, wow.
Yeah. Look at where I am.
Yeah. It just takes consistency and time and just having that foundation of like why you started this in the first place. So yeah, like you said, you're not going to get that time back with your daughter. And if you didn't get that one thing done, how critical is that? And really focusing on what's really the priority at that moment. And that was clearly your daughter. And it's like we just get so blinded by where we are in that minute.
And I think also blinded by trying to get to the next thing, right? Like I never sit long enough and go, okay, look what I've done. It's just, this is done and let's move on and let's hit the next goal. And so that can be very blinding too. Just always looking at what's next.
Yeah. New levels, new devils, they say. But yeah, I think that's all great lessons. So where can listeners connect with you? Where can they find more out about your candles and all of the things?
I'm on most social media platforms as at the Copper Belle, all words spelled how you would expect them to be spelled. Right. My website is thecopperbelle.ca. You can have a look. And I think even if you just Googled the Copper Belle, you could probably stumble across me.
Nice. I love it. And definitely, I love the humor in your candles. I love how they look, and it's just, I don't know, it's just all good. I took a look and I was like, wow, that's
Thank
really
you.
Awesome. So definitely give yourself a pat on the back.
I think literally and figuratively.
Right? There you go. That's awesome. I love it. Thank you, Katrina, so much for being with us today and sharing your story. I think it's just so inspirational for anybody who is starting a business or has a business and who's a mom, because it's not like something you arrive at. It's like something you consistently have to work on, your mindset and where you are and what your goals are and resetting your priorities. And so I think, you're definitely a good testament to all of those.
Yes. Things. Thank you so much. It was nice to be here.
No, thank you. Thank you so much to Katrina for sharing her story with us this week. I'm always amazed at how much fun I have in the conversations with the amazing women that I had the opportunity to speak with. So thank you. And it was such a great conversation. I thought I would wrap up the episode with a list of some of the important topics that we talked about. So number one, if you're in a situation where you need to make income or more income, take an assessment of what you can do, or maybe a hobby or a side hustle that you never considered as a full-time business, and consider the possibility that you could make it a success. And then number two, you can stand out in a crowded marketplace if you take a unique perspective on a product or service. And number three, as a business owner, don't forget to show up online and engage with your customer. Number four, the fear, stress, and anxiety of owning a business doesn't go away with success. Number 5, the healthiest thing to do when you're stuck in comparison mode is to get off of social media. And number 6, don't get stuck in comparison with other people who run similar businesses as you do, because everyone is different. Number 7, keep in mind that if there is a less barrier to entry for a product or service, the more competition that there is going to be in the marketplace. Number 8, that being said, we can all find a niche. Number 9, your target market is not everyone who may want to buy your product or service. Get clear on who you sell to and your customer. Number 10, the more you do things, the easier it is. Number 11, we are all desperate to connect. Consider meeting people in person and offering a sample of your product or service to stand out. Number 12, even if it's terrifying, the more you do it, the less scary it is. Number 13, whatever you are avoiding, do it. Number 14, if you want to change your business, you have to change what you are doing in your business. Number 15, remember that you have more bounce on the other side of difficult times. Number 16, be confident that if you don't make the right decision in your business, you can quickly change the course. Number 17, be in the mode of constantly adapting in your business. And then number 18, handle customer feedback carefully. Stay clear and on the path of what you want, but know when to consider feedback and other opinions. Number 19, give yourself grace. Parenting requires a lot of time, energy, and mental capacity. Give yourself permission not to work crazy hours on your business. No one starts a business hoping to work more. Accept your growth, maybe slower, in order to give more time to your family and yourself. And number 20, celebrate your wins. Don't be blinded by always trying to get to the next thing. Thank you so much again for joining me this week. You can find Katrina's amazing candles at The Copper Bell on most social media platforms. And then also you can connect with me on Instagram at angela.masciulli, MASCIULLI. And 2, I would so appreciate it if you enjoyed this episode, if you would leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can do that by finding the show, scrolling to the bottom, and you can tap to leave a star review and also write a review. And then if you take a screenshot of that review and then tag me on Instagram, I will give you a shout out on the next episode. And then also please share it with another mompreneur who may find this inspiring. And then if you would like to be on the show or you would like to connect, please feel free to send me a DM on Instagram. And again, please remember that I have a free aligned mompreneur workbook that's available in the show notes and my Instagram bio link. And I think that about does it for this week. Thank you so much for listening. And I look forward to the next episode next week with one of my favorite people and fellow travelpreneur. If you don't want to miss an episode, be sure that you follow the show wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend. Bye.